Hello everybody! If you want to read all the stories in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you. Short story 577, The Case of the Missing Biscuit. Upper Beginner. Arthur loved his afternoon cup of tea. He especially loved it with a good biscuit. Every day, exactly at 3 o'clock, he would sit in his favourite armchair, pour a cup of hot tea, and open his special biscuit tin. The tin was blue with a picture of a palace on the front. Inside there was always a packet of his favourite chocolate biscuits. Today was no different. At 3 o'clock, Arthur walked into the kitchen. He hummed a happy tune. He put the kettle on to boil and reached for the blue tin. He opened the lid. His face changed. The happy tune stopped. The tin was empty. "What?" he shouted. He looked inside again. Nothing. Not one biscuit. He felt his heart beat a little faster. This was a serious problem. He looked around the kitchen. The window was closed. The door was locked. Who could have taken his biscuit? A criminal mastermind? A sneaky neighbour? "Carol!" he called to his wife, who was in the living room. Carol came in. "Yes, dear," she asked. She was holding a book. "My biscuits are gone," he announced. "The tin is empty, completely empty." Carol looked at the empty tin and then at Arthur. She smiled. "Did you eat them yesterday, perhaps?" "No," he said loudly. "I would remember. This is a mystery, a crime. I must investigate." He put the kettle on the counter. He took out a magnifying glass from a drawer. It was a joke present from his birthday. But today it was a serious tool. He looked at the counter. No clues. He looked at the floor. No crumbs. Carol watched him, trying not to laugh. "Maybe a tiny mouse with a tiny bag," she suggested. Arthur did not find this funny. "This is serious, Carol. The biscuit thief is still out there. We need to be careful." He searched the whole kitchen. He looked in the cupboards, under the table, even behind the fridge. Nothing. He walked back into the living room, feeling defeated. He sat heavily in his armchair and sighed. "Oh dear," he said. "The biscuit thief has won." Carol came over to him with a cup of tea. She put it on the small table next to his chair. "Drink your tea, Arthur. It will make you feel better." He put a hand in his jacket pocket. He felt something. It was small, round, and covered in chocolate. He pulled it out. It was a biscuit. His biscuit. He stared at it, then at Carol. He remembered. He had taken one out this morning and put it in his pocket, thinking he would eat it later. He had completely forgotten. Carol laughed, a big, warm laugh. "So the thief was you all along." Arthur looked at the biscuit and then at the cup of tea. He blushed a little. "I suppose so," he said, and he took a big, happy bite of the biscuit. The mystery was solved. Vocabulary notes. Hummed a happy tune. To hum is to sing with your mouth closed. This phrase means Arthur was singing a simple, happy melody to himself. Example. He hummed a happy tune. He put the kettle on to boil and reached for the blue tin. Similar words. Sang softly. Chanted. Murmured. Favourite armchair. This is a comfortable chair that a person likes best. It's often where they relax or read. Example. Every day, exactly at 3 o'clock, he would sit in his favourite armchair. Similar words. Preferred chair. Best chair. Shouted. This means to speak very loudly, often because you are angry, surprised, or excited. Example. "What?" he shouted. Similar words. yelled, yelled, cried out, screamed. A serious problem. This is an issue that is important and not funny. It needs to be solved. Example, he felt his heart beat a little faster. This was a serious problem. Similar words, a big issue, a grave matter, a difficult situation. Criminal mastermind. This is a clever and intelligent person who plans and organizes crimes. Arthur is using this phrase in a funny way because it's only a biscuit that is missing. Example, who could have taken his biscuit? A criminal mastermind? A sneaky neighbour? Similar words, genius thief, evil planner. Magnifying glass. This is a special glass that makes things look bigger. It is a common tool for detectives. Example, he took out a magnifying glass from a drawer. Similar words, hand lens. Feeling defeated. This means to feel sad and disappointed because you have failed or lost. Example, he walked back into the living room feeling defeated. Similar words, discouraged, beaten, disheartened, hopeless. Blushed a little. To blush is when your face becomes red, usually because you are embarrassed or shy. Example, he blushed a little. I suppose so, he said. Similar words, reddened, flushed. The mystery was solved. This is a phrase used at the end of a story or investigation when the answer to a puzzle is found. Example, the mystery was solved. Similar words, the puzzle was answered. The problem was figured out. The case was closed. Story written by Gemini Pro AI. Image created by Imagio AI. To read all the stories in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you. CC Music, Drifting at 432 Hz, Unicorn Heads.
All right, today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to take this wonderfully simple story about a missing biscuit and use it like a magnifying glass. Why? To reveal the powerful storytelling architecture that's hiding inside, the stuff that makes even the smallest tales so satisfying. So, let's just dive right in.
So let me ask you something. What happens when your perfect routine gets broken? You know, that one thing you do every day, the thing that kind of grounds you. What happens when it's suddenly, and for no reason you can see, just disrupted? That question right there is pretty much the engine for almost every story ever told, including the one we're about to explore.
Okay, so every great story kicks off with what we call the setup. This is where we meet our main character and get a feel for what their normal looks like. And for our hero, Arthur, normal is, well, it's a state of perfect, predictable bliss.
And the details here are absolutely key. Every single day, 3 o'clock on the dot, he sits in his favorite armchair, pours that hot cup of tea, and opens this special blue tin. Inside that tin, that's the secret to his happiness, a packet of his favorite chocolate biscuits. You see, this isn't just a routine for him, it's like a sacred ceremony. And the story sets up this perfectly unchanging world, right before it smashes it to pieces.
And here we go. We've reached maybe the most important moment in any story's beginning, the inciting incident. This is the catalyst, right? The spark that just throws the character's entire world into chaos and gets the plot rolling. And for Arthur, boy, is it a moment of shock. You can almost feel the whiplash here. He's humming, he's happy, everything's perfect. He opens the lid, and bam, silence. The happy tune just stops. The mood completely tanks. In just a handful of words, the whole feel of the story gets turned upside down. And then you get this. Just one word, a single shouted, "What?" It perfectly captures his shock, his disbelief, his horror. I mean, that's the sound of his perfect little world shattering. It's the starting gun for our mystery.
You see, this gap, this is what drives the whole story. All conflict, really, comes from that space between what we expect and what actually happens. Arthur expected his biscuit. Reality gave him an empty tin. And that contrast, that's the problem he now has to solve.
All right, so the problem's on the table. Now we move into the next phase, the rising action. This is where our character tries to fix everything, get their world back to normal. And in Arthur's case, his attempt to solve this problem is where things get really fun.
Just listen to how he talks. A mystery, a crime. He immediately blows this missing snack up to the level of a major criminal investigation. And this completely over-the-top reaction is the secret sauce that turns this whole thing from a tiny inconvenience into a hilarious comedy. And just like that, we're hooked. We're in on the investigation with him. I mean, think about it. The door was locked, the window was closed, so who could have done it? His mind just starts racing, running through all the possibilities.
And what a list of suspects. He doesn't for a second think, maybe I forgot. Nope. His brain jumps straight to criminal mastermind. He's picturing a sneaky neighbor bypassing his locks. The stakes, at least in his head, are sky high.
Let's just hang on this definition for a second. A clever and intelligent person who plans and organizes crimes. I mean, that's perfect for a Bond villain, right? But for a missing biscuit, it's that ridiculous mismatch that makes it so fun.
Of course, every great detective needs his tools. So Arthur whips out a magnifying glass, which was a joke birthday gift, by the way, and he's like, this is a serious tool. He's all in on playing detective, looking for crumbs, for clues, anything to crack this case, even though his props are kind of giving the game away.
And then there's his wife, Carol. She's kind of our anchor to reality here. While Arthur is off in his own little detective drama, Carol is just gently poking fun at the whole situation. Her idea of a tiny mouse with a tiny bag, it's the perfect funny little jab that tells us she knows exactly what's going on.
So, after searching everywhere and finding nothing, our detective is about to throw in the towel. And this is it. We've hit the story's peak, the climax. This is that moment of highest tension right before the mystery is finally solved.
Just follow the emotional arc here. He's feeling totally defeated. He's lost. The great biscuit thief has won. He just slumps back into his armchair, the whole investigation a total bust. But then, he does one last thing. He puts his hand in his jacket pocket, and everything is about to change again.
And there it is. The answer. The number one. Not one suspect, but one biscuit. The very biscuit he's been turning the house upside down for, the source of his entire crisis, was right there, in his pocket the whole time.
And of course, Carol gets to deliver the perfect punchline. She just laughs, and it breaks all that tension Arthur built up, and she says what we're all thinking. So the thief was you all along. And just like that, the case is closed. Mystery solved. Okay, so that was a fun story, right? But why did we just go through all that? What's the real takeaway here? Well, now we're going to zoom out and look at the brilliant structure that was hiding in plain sight the whole time. This is why the story is so effective. It's not really about a biscuit. It's a perfect miniature model of a classic mystery. It takes all the same beats, all the same ideas you'd find in a serious detective novel, but just applies them to this super ordinary situation. Look at how this breaks down. The story's charm is all about using these classic mystery ideas, or tropes, in a really low-stakes setting. The crime? It's a missing biscuit. The detective? It's Arthur, who's also the victim. The red herring, the thing that distracts him, is this whole idea of an outside thief. And the big twist at the end? The detective was the culprit all along. It's just a masterclass in using familiar parts to build a great story.
So what makes this so funny? Well, the engine driving the humor is something called dramatic irony. And all that means is there's a gap between what the audience knows and what the character knows. We and Carol can see how absurd this whole thing is, but Arthur, he thinks he's in a deadly serious detective drama. And that gap, that's where all the humor comes from.
And that kind of leaves us with one last thought. This little story about a missing biscuit is a great reminder that sometimes the biggest crises we face, the most baffling mysteries, are the ones we create for ourselves.
It really makes you wonder, right? How many of the great mysteries in our own lives are just a biscuit in our pocket waiting for us to find it? Thanks for joining this explainer.